Hello. I've just been pondering something with God for the last, just the last couple of days, really. Um, I'm sure there's a lot more pondering that could be done, but I was reading um, a post earlier about happiness and about how people put off their happiness. And they're not going to be happy until they retire. They're not going to be happy until their spouse straightens up. They're not going to be, it was in the post, I'm not making this up. They're not going to be happy until, their finances are in order or whatever it is, right? And the whole point of the post was, don't wait for those things. Life is short, blah, blah, blah. You could be happy today. And there is more to it, but it got me thinking again about what I've been pondering with God about if we just take it another step for us who are believers, what does happiness look like for us? And thinking about how some of us can put off enjoying the fullness of God inside of us and resting in the fullness of God inside of us, the finished work, and experiencing the fruit of His life. How, in some believers, because of just wrong doctrines or whatever, things that they've learned and belief systems in their heart, well, however it came about, think they're not going to be experiencing that until something, until they've, I don't know, served enough, until they've given enough, until they've beat the addiction that they have in their life, until everything in their life is perfect in what they deem God would see as perfect and acceptable, when, in fact, we are already perfect and acceptable. But they're waiting to experience the life and the fullness of God inside of them until whatever it is, fill in the blank. Whatever it is, they think they're lacking, they're not going to be able to experience God until that lack is met, whatever it may be. So I was just thinking about this a lot the last couple days, and I was trying to find um, a picture of the cross and then a picture of what someone would deem as happiness or their life being full and complete. But for everybody, that's different, right? And so I just thought about asking, just imagine with me for just a couple minutes here of what you think um, having the fullness of God dwelling on the inside of you and resting in that fullness, what does that look like for you? Or what would it take? Well, I'm trying to think of the right words. I didn't really write anything out here. Imagine for me your best life, right? What that looks like for you. Is it the house? Is it cars? Is it money? Is it being able to give a whole bunch of money? Is it being able to eat whatever you want without guilt? Whatever that is. I mean, imagine what does that look like? And is that also what you think having the life of God looks like? All the stuff, getting all the stuff, having everything right, being in perfect health, and all of that. And then I thought about, how do you measure that? And I thought about Jesus on the cross. And I thought, now put your two pictures, the pictures of a picture of Jesus on the cross, bleeding, stripped naked, whipped, suffering, crown of thorns, beard pulled out, naked, um, and put your picture of what total happiness and fulfillment and fullness looks like to you. And does that match? Um, and the question that I would ask is, if you think, and this is going to be really tough for some people because I'm still twisting on it, and how to say it and get it across the right way or clearly. But oh, what was the question? Oh, if you think the perfect life looks something different than Jesus on the cross, if you think experiencing the fullness of God's life in you looks different than the cross, then you're chasing a carrot. Because I know that sounds crazy, right? Because you're thinking happy, have everything, and all of that, and that's the perfect life. Um, but the perfect life would be what Jesus had while he was on the cross, nailed to the cross, dying our death away. Um, it would look like rest, even in the midst of all the contradiction that we think we see, even in the suffering. It would look like him calling out, and for us, calling out, Abba, knowing with full assurance that he's going to raise me up. I'm going to live. He's not gonna, he doesn't abhor me in my affliction. He hasn't left me. He's right here. It would look like resting in the midst of the most horrible circumstances. Imagine what the worst thing that could come against you, and still being full of joy, still resting in the Father's love for you and the life that he has for you. And so I know that that could be really hard to take hold of, because we're so used to, especially in America, um, um, we're just so used to um, finding happiness through the things that we could get. If we get this, if we're happy, if, and gaining. We think that gain is godliness. We think that, just like the Jews did. And it's not, gain is not godliness. Um, in fact, Jesus said, for those who want to keep their life in this world, they're going to lose it. But for those who are willing to lose it, they will gain it. And another verse to really sit with God and consider, with whatever's going on in your life. And it's just that my eyes have just been open to, and they have been for quite some time. And especially, I got a lot of understanding from reading Psalm 22 and Psalm 23 back to back. We all know, Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I do not lack. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. You know the rest of it. And if you don't, look it up. But seeing Jesus was saying that while he was on the cross. He was saying, you lead me beside still waters. You set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. He was saying, I do not lack. I don't need anything. There's nothing in this world that this world could give me. There's nothing this world can give me and serve me with. And I'm laying down that life. And I have the life of my Father. That's the life I want. That's the life I'm committing myself unto receiving and unto having, knowing that he's going to raise me from the grave. And you read in Psalm 22, you actually do see him pictured on the cross there, but you also see hope in that, at the end, and where his heart was, and knowing that he will stand again and give testimony in the presence of the brethren. And there's just so much more in that, and I don't have it open. to read it, but you can go and read that and really see Jesus saying those words. I mean, he wrote it, right? So he knew what the Psalms were saying. He wrote, he is the word, right? Made flesh, right? So he knew what those Psalms said, and we know that was in his heart, because on the cross he said, and that's how Psalm 22 begins, I believe. I should actually pull it up, but there was something else I want to read, and I don't want to lose my place. Just go find it for yourself. He said, my God, why have you forsaken me? Well, people think, that God had forsaken him, but we esteem that God had forsaken him. But if you go on to read the rest of it, you understand that God had not forsaken him. Jesus said many, many times that he and the Father were one, that in fact, he told the disciples, you're all going to leave me, but I'm not alone. The Father was, I am in my Father, and the Father is in me. I mean, there's just endless scriptures and things that he said that attest to the fact that the Father never left him on the cross. And it was us who because Jesus is dying, right? So it doesn't look like the best circumstances to our eyes. We esteemed him stricken by God, and that God had left him there. But in fact, God was right there with him, in him. It was God. He was God. He is God. It became God in the flesh. So he was not alone. He was not forsaken. And so you just go on to read the rest of that, and the confidence that he had that the Father would not leave him in the grave, and what his heart was set on, and that gave him life, so much so that you just keep reading on to the next psalm and also see Jesus saying, I lack nothing. The Lord is my shepherd. He comforts me, he leads me. He was lying down in the tender green grass and strolling in cool waters, while he was on the cross. That's where he was. That was the fullness of all that he is and was and is, of God on the inside of him, and the promise that he would be raised, so that no matter what came against him, and death was, he knew he wasn't going to stay there. And that just brings so much hope to us, seeing that no matter what circumstances we find ourselves in, of the hope and the promise that we have. And so, an interesting little thing, I happened to click on a verse this morning in Hebrews. I was reading some of Hebrews, and it's chapter 10. And I'm just going to read from verse 32, kind of in light of what I'm talking about here. He says, but recall, and you could go ahead and read before it, and to find out, he's talking about the just shall live by faith. But he says, recall the former days in which, after you were illuminated, you endured a great struggle with sufferings, partly while you were made a spectacle both by reproaches and tribulations, and partly while you became companions of those who were so treated. For you had compassion on me in my chains, and joyfully, here's the part, joyfully accepted the plundering of your goods, knowing that you have a better and an enduring possession for yourselves in heaven. Therefore, do not cast away your confidence, which has great reward. For you have need of endurance, so that after you have done the will of God, to endure in the faith of the Son of God. But you have need of endurance, so that after you have done the will of God, you may receive the promise. For yet a little while, and he who is coming will come, and will not tarry. Now the just shall live by faith. But if anyone draws back, my soul has no pleasure in him. But we are not of those who draw back to perdition, but of those who believe to the saving of the soul. And so I was just really thinking about what he said there, excuse me, um, joyfully accepted the plundering of your goods, knowing that you have a better and enduring possession for yourselves in heaven. How many of us actually can honestly say that or be willing to have all of everything we have plundered, taken from us, destroyed, and still be glad and joyful and full of hope and rest that our Father has us, and we rest because we have a better hope. We have something that is lasting. All of this stuff is perishable. Um, it's all perishable. It's all corruptible. We have an incorruptible promise of life and immortality waiting for us, and that it's just really something to think about, because we place so much emphasis on what we can get and what we think we need in order to be happy or in order to experience the fullness and the life of God. And so people are always chasing a carrot, to try to get one or the other. And how many of you know, even if you get the perfect house and all of that, it's still going to come with, you got to maintain that house and you got to preserve that. You got to work. You got to, I mean, and then things can happen to that house. And anyway, I think you know what I'm talking about. And so I was just thinking that no matter how good our life looks here, um, no matter how much we have, it's not the thing. It's not lasting. It's all perishable. It's all corruptible. um, and then trying to preserve our lives and in order to keep our lives. Um, no, Jesus said if you're gonna do that, you're gonna lose it. It's not the life. And so thinking about again, if the life you think that is the perfect life, whether you're looking at it in terms of what happiness looks like or whether you're looking at it in terms of having the life of God, if that looks different than Jesus on the cross, you're chasing a carrot. So, all that to say is, again, Jesus lacked nothing while he was on the cross. We lack nothing in the midst of our trials, tribulations, whatever it is that we go through. We lack nothing. And even if we don't see everything perfectly like we think we're supposed to see coming out of us, if we don't say there's things coming out of us that don't necessarily look like God, well, we got all eternity to sort that out. It doesn't mean that God is accusing you. In fact, you might even be hearing the voice of the accuser, because God isn't displeased. God isn't your Father isn't pointing the finger. The Father isn't saying you need to straighten that up before I can allow you to feel my peace, love, and joy. He's not saying that. We can, in the midst of no matter what's going on, whether it be personal or outward circumstances coming in at us, we can experience and trust in the Father. We can grab hold and behold Jesus on the cross and fellowship with the faith of the Son of God, the faith that was in his heart. That even in the midst, he was not alone. Even in the midst, he knew it was temporary. He knew that the Father was going to raise him up and give him eternal, immortal life, the very life of the Father. And that's how he could rest in the midst of it. That's how he could, everything points to, the resurrection. Um, everything, you know, um, even the good things that we experience um, that happen. Oh, that's just a whole nother subject. I don't even want to go there because we're going over all that great stuff in church, and we'll be for the next couple of days at GospelRevolutionChurch.com. Anyway, I just wanted to share that's really been on my heart and really been thinking upon that and just letting God bring forth what he wants to bring forth out of that and just remind you that even if you don't feel strength, it doesn't mean that strength isn't present. Even if you don't feel hope, it doesn't mean that hope isn't present. Even if you don't feel peace, it doesn't mean peace isn't present. Even if you don't feel joyful, it doesn't mean joy isn't present. Jesus had all of those things, and to our eyes, it looked like he didn't, but he did. And just behold the life and the faith of Jesus. Just that's why I'm just so glad that we just don't ever veer off of the faith of the Son of God and Christ crucified and the resurrection at our church. And it leaves you in a place where you actually can embrace the cross because you know that's where life is found. And it's just such a beautiful thing. And so, um, God is with you. He loves you. He has nothing else in his hand but his life to give you. And that is all encompassing, I think is the right word, that contains everything that he is. Jesus is full of the Godhead bodily. We are complete in him. You lack nothing. You lack absolutely nothing. You have everything. If you've believed upon Jesus and that God raised him from the dead, if you call yourself a believer, you're not lacking. You have everything. And if you're not and seeing that or understanding that, that's okay. God just so wants to continue to convince you. And so just talk with your Father and be honest. And you can even be angry with him in the midst of circumstances. You can even express your anger to him and, and tell him, hey, I'm not experiencing this. What's up? You need to show me and persuade my heart. And he will do that for you. And so I just wanted to share all of that. I think that's all I have to share right now at the moment. But just another reminder that you are the apple of his eye. God is deeply, passionately in love with you. He has done everything to serve you with his life. It isn't about you serving him. Um, and so you can rest and just behold the faith of the Son of God, and behold the resurrection, and ask him to persuade your heart of how those things can fill you up with the fullness and the joy and the love and the contentment and peace and rest of God, even in the midst of things falling apart around you. if that be the case, I hope it's not, but we all go through stuff. So even in the midst, you can experience the fullness of God and be happy.